Namaste. Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of Amrit Kal Ki Or, which is organized by Dr. Shama Prasad Mukherjee Research Foundation. Today we have a very valuable guest with us and a very good friend as well, Mr. Deep Haldar. Deep has been a very well-known journalist for a long time, working with very prominent media houses. In the recent past, he has shown to the world a very important and a critical dimension of his, where he written two books, which otherwise most of the people have ignored such issues, but which are very critical. The first one was about the massacre of Hindu Dalits that happened in a place called Madi Jhapi. His first book is named Blood Island. Recently, he has come out with his second book, which is named Being Hindu in Bangladesh. And it is going to, and it has actually explored a lot of critical aspects of the challenges that Hindu population in Bangladesh faces. And he has been visiting Bangladesh to write on this book. Um, Deepda, thank you so much for being part of this small program that we have. It is an honor for us. I'll hand over to you to explain to us initially about the critical aspects of the book that it covers and how has been your experience while being in Bangladesh writing on this book. Over to you, Deep.
Thank you, Pathikrit. It's an honor being here. Great to meet you again. I think the way I would want to talk about the book is that it is a story in a sense of two Octobers, October 1946 and October 2021. Let me start with the more recent October, October 2021. So I was sitting in a Noida newsroom, and it was just before Durga Puja. It was in fact during Durga Puja, and I was looking at the news, and this is a time when Bengalis across the world feel very nostalgic and want to go to Kolkata to participate in the festivity of Durga Puja. But suddenly I saw there's a series of news that's coming from out of Bangladesh, news of anti-Hindu riots that has spread across several districts of Bangladesh, and it all happened, which we got to know later, over a piece of fake news. The fake news was that a copy of the Quran was found at the feet of a statue of Lord Hanuman, and a section of the Muslim community in Bangladesh took that as blasphemy. And anti-Hindu riots started in Kumilla district, and then it spread across to various other districts. Lives were lost, homes were burned down, there were attacks on Hindu life and property. Several pandals that have been put up because it was Durga Puja time were burnt and destroyed, vandalized. So it was very disconcerting for me to read the news that was coming out of Bangladesh. And I decided that I should visit Bangladesh, because that's the same tract of land which from where my family came from. It was India then, it was undivided India, Akhand Bharat, if you will. And this was in 1946, a year before, less than a year before India's independence, and also the partition of India. And that was the time my family shifted from that side of the border to this side of the border, and from East Bengal, which later became East Pakistan and is now Bangladesh. So I have my roots there. So I wanted to know what happened to Hindus who stayed back in Bangladesh, who, like my family, did not switch over to this part, which is India. So I thought that I'd pay Bangladesh a visit. I have, of course, been in Bangladesh before when I accompanied my father, who used to go there, who used to go to Dhaka University to give lectures. But that was some time ago. So I decided to go and see for myself. In the process, I came across my co-author who I also happen to know, and he said he wants to be part of this journey, wants to go to Bangladesh with me and also discover his roots. And while talking to him, I discovered that a similar incident, in fact, much more horrific, had taken place in October 1946, the very infamous Noakhali riots, where almost an entire population was forcibly converted from Hindus to Muslims, where there were numerous rapes and murders and forced conversions. And Abhishek's family was in Noakhali when all of this was happening. His grandmother, Smritikona Bishwas, who's unfortunately no more, she actually is a survivor of that massacre. And she and her family, she was a 12-year-old girl at that time, she and her family hid in a school building, inside of a school building, when murder and mayhem and rapes were happening outside. So we visited. I visited Abhishek's grandmother, Smritikana Bishwas, and from her I got to know the story of another October 1946. So here I was wanting to go to Bangladesh to see what's happening with the Hindu population in Bangladesh. And I had the story of two Octobers, October 1946, from the survivor of Noakhali riots, Smritikana Bishwas, who happened to be the grandmother of my co-author of the book, Abhishek Bishwas. Smritikana unfortunately is no more. She passed away a month before the book came out last year in October. But and of course the stories that I read sitting in a Noida newsroom of the anti-Hindu riots that were taking place in October of 2021. So the book basically, and then of course we went to, in October 2022 we went to Bangladesh, and we tried to visit many survivors of the 2021 anti-Hindu riots. And then we kept going and kept going, and the book became about the story of two Octobers, the story of today as also yesterday. What was East Bengal, and why did it become what became of it when India was partitioned, and what is the state of Hindus in Bangladesh today? So that, in short, is how the book has been framed.
Right. And before you go into deeper aspect of the book, which I will definitely request you to get into. Interestingly, the first book of yours, which is Blood Island, also has a connection with
Yes.
Bangladesh, because
Yes.
most of the people who were massacred were probably from Dalit community, Dalit Hindus who had come to India, and they unfortunately were not treated in the best of the ways
Yes.
by the regimes that time. So if you can throw some light on that.
Yes, I mean, it's in a sense, my current book is a continuation of my first book, Blood Island. So Blood Island spoke about the fact that even after the partition of India, from the eastern side, which the side that was East Bengal became East Pakistan, and now Bangladesh after the 1971 War of Independence, when East Pakistan severed ties with West Pakistan, renamed itself, and there was a sense of a common culture and language that was supposed to unite the Hindus in Bangladesh of East Pakistan, and forge a more syncretic identity over a narrow religious identity. How, despite that, anti-Hindu riots continued, and right through the 40s, 50s, 60s, and even some parts of the 70s, Hindu refugees started coming over to West Bengal. Now they came in large numbers, so the state government in West Bengal had felt that there was not enough space to accommodate them, so they were sent to this place called Dandakaranya, which is the Dandakaranya of the mythical times, parts of central India, and they were kept in refugee camps, and they were asked to do road building work and several other work for the government, all kinds of public work. And though over a period of time, those temporary refugee camps became pakka houses, but their heart and soul was in Bengal. And they were told, it's very interesting that when they were being sent to Dandakaranna, the party that stood by them was the left party, was CPM and CPIM, CPI, and all of these parties that later constituted the left front. But the leaders of this party told them that, look, why are you being sent out of Bengal? You have come from East Pakistan, which is now Bangladesh, and if we were to come to power, we would accommodate you within West Bengal, because the language is similar to where you have come from. The language is similar, the soil is fertile, there is enough fish to sort of to sustain your dietary habits, and also you can catch fish and sell fish, which were the traditional professions these people engaged in. When they did come to power in 1977, they completely forgot their promise, their older promise to these people, and a large section of this Hindu, mostly Dalit refugees, on their own they moved from Dandakaranya to West Bengal, and they had identified an island called Marijhapi, and they went and settled there. They formed a township, and over a period of 6 to 8 months, it was a bustling township. It was an uninhabited island, this island, little island called Marijhapi, and they, on their own, without any help from the government, from the left front government, which was then fully in power, they created a township. Now, what happened was the West Bengal government didn't like it. Jyoti Basu, who was the chief minister then, did not like it. and they were told to go right back to the Dandakaranya, leaving this project of establishing a homeland in the Marichapi island. These people refused because they have had enough. They were betrayed many times. They first had to leave their homeland, then they came and they were asked to leave West Bengal, go to the Andakarana. They thought the left leaders were their friends and they would be brought back once the left was in power. The left had completely forgotten about that promise. And now that they came and set up a township on their own, the left was telling them again to go back, to abandon the town project and go back. So they said no. And what happened, particularly over the next few months, end of 1978 to May 1979, was one of the worst massacres recorded in post independent India's history. Interestingly, I said recorded. It's not a recorded massacre because there was hardly anything that was written about. Few newspaper articles here and there, a couple of books which magically vanished from the shelves, books in Bengali written by people who are in the know of things. Amitav Ghosh fictionalized it, the Marichapi massacre, in his 2001 book, The Hungry Tide. And then in 2019, I wrote Blood Island. My book Blood Island was published, which basically was a book of the testimonies of the survivors of the massacre. So what I did was, I did not say that I was too small to know what happened at that time. I was 4 5 years old. But I think what I tried to do is I found out survivors of the massacre who have now spread out to Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, and of course parts of West Bengal. I went to them, and over a series of interviews, I got to know what happened to them in Marichapi, the atrocities that they had to face from the West Bengal government, from the police, from their own word, from their own voice. So Blood Island, my book, is basically survivors of one of the worst massacres in independent India, telling what happened to them themselves. So that's what the book. So when the book came out, you can understand that there was a backlash from the left. And my simple answer was, this is not me telling you what happened. This is the survivors of the massacre telling the world what happened to them. And with each chapter, there's a picture of the person I spoke to, and where he is from, what happened to him, how did he survive the massacre. So the book is an oral testimony of survivors of Marichapi massacre. Now, coming to the current book, uh, it did not somehow, the Marichapi massacre, of course, it was done by the left front government. But the reason why they left East Bengal, East Pakistan, and now Bangladesh is because of the attack on their religion. Okay, it's because the attack on them, because of their religiosity, and that somehow did not stop. And though the situation, you'd know this, though at least on the face of it, the situation is better in Bangladesh for the last 15 years now that Sheikh Hasina government is in power. This is a fifth term in power, so 15 straight years, and she was in power once before. uh, Army League's stated position is secularism, a secular democratic Bangladesh. But what is the churn within the civil society tells a very different story. There is a sense of othering that has not gone, despite Sheikh Hasina being in power. But the situation was way worse before she was in power in 2001. It's a standout year when the BNP Jamaat combined came to power. The anti-Hindu violence that took place was, I mean, it's mind-boggling, the kind of rapes and forced conversions and killings of Hindus that took place in Bangladesh. And this is 2001, not too far back. And even today, like I said, 2021 anti-Hindu riots was what compelled me to write the book. But there are these sporadic attacks that take place on Hindus in Bangladesh. Not all of it is written by the mainstream media, by the local media there. But you can follow some atheist bloggers, you can follow some independent news sources, and I'm now, of course, in several WhatsApp groups. You will see that there is an attack on Hindu religiosity, not always so direct, but there is a sense of othering that continues to the day. And the book, Being Hindu in Bangladesh, somehow tries to capture that, and also tries to pit it against the idea of Bangladesh that was floated in 1971 when Bangladesh was born, the idea of a more syncretic, more inclusive Bangladesh. So the book, in a sense, also wants to constantly remind the people of Bangladesh its origin story, that what was the necessity of Bangladesh being born in the first place. the reason why it's severe ties with West Pakistan, it is to have a it is to give prominence to the Bengali language and culture, and that culture is a more syncretic culture than what the forces against Hindus or forces against secularism today, even today, are trying to say.
So, on one hand, we actually hear stories about the progress of Bangladesh economically. It has surpassed that of Pakistan, and
Yes,
at the same time, there is other side where this othering and the ingrained disdain on the borderline, perhaps, or also hatred, which I can use the word hatred
yes.
of other religions, especially Hinduism, continues. So, do you think that the level of radicalization continues to be on an upward scale, and it has it has always been organized? Perhaps, do you think there are organizations which are orchestrating it, and somehow the global media has been oblivion or deliberately put some kind of a window dressing on it, so that this part of victimization, where it is Hindus, does not become a global furor, as they try to put it when it comes to Syrians and others when the ISIS thing happened? Your
Yes,
view on it?
absolutely. For instance, this entire debate about whether Sheikh Hasina is democratic or not, whether elections in Bangladesh is fair or not, in this debate, people, especially the Western media, large chunks of the Western media, bring in the fact that why are you not allowing your opposition parties why are you not listening to your opposition parties? Now, one of the major opposition parties, which is also a religious construct, is the Jamaat-e-Islami Bangladesh. Jamaat-e-Islami Bangladesh is a political party, religious as well as a political party. It's the largest Islamic political party in Bangladesh, and you know what the Jamaat-e-Islami is. They were against the very idea of Bangladesh. They did not want East Pakistan to sever its ties from West Pakistan and become Bangladesh in the first place. Now, Jamaat-e-Islami has been banned by the Supreme Court of Bangladesh, barred from the Supreme Court of Bangladesh from fighting elections. They could not fight this election. But the point is that they continue to exist and and have in its ranks, fill its ranks with a large number of people, and they come from the civil society. Now, Jamaat-e-Islami Bangladesh's stated aim is Sharia law. Even till last year December, they had said that if they were to come to power, or if they were to back a government that comes to power, they would introduce Sharia law in Bangladesh. Now, this is a reality of Bangladesh that much of the Western press does not talk about when they talk about whether Sheikh Hasina is democratic or not. They should also see the country they are writing on. For instance, the opposite, of course, there should be a robust opposition in every democracy, but in the name of that opposition, you can't bring in a fundamentalist force that goes against the very idea of secularism and democracy. And it's not just, and Peter D. Haas, US ambassador to Bangladesh, I mean, there were news reports in Bangladesh media, and that he has been constantly talking to the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, which is the largest principal opposition party in Bangladesh, and who's also in close touch with Jamaat-e-Islami, though officially that these two parties are not together. But if you look at how they run their campaigns, how they protest on the streets, how the protest on the streets turned violent, they have the same modus operandi. And this somehow the Western press, when they talk about democracy in Bangladesh, conveniently avoid that what are the other forces at play in Bangladesh. So Jamaat-e-Islami Bangladesh, it's almost as if the Western press do not even see what they are about, what they want to, what kind of country they want to have once they are in power, what is their idea of society, what is their idea of how women should be, how minorities should be. These are all out there in the public domain, but I see very little talk on the threats to Bangladesh's secularism and democracy in much of the Western press, and which is amazing. It's all very fine to criticize the Bangladeshi Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, and constantly sort of keep a check on the state of democracy in Bangladesh, but that process cannot involve giving a free pass to forces that are so fundamentalist and so undemocratic in nature. So I think this is astounding hypocrisy in the part of both America, the American state, and also the media, much of the foreign media. You
Of course.
must remember the Time magazine cover on Hasina, which I think the title of the cover was Hard Power. Now, hard power, yes, I mean, she's been in power for 15 straight years now, but 20 years in total. There was a term before. So 20 years in power, I'm sure there is enough and more points by which you can criticize the Sheikh Hasina government. But if you do not contextualize it, if you do not see that the forces that are threatening to unseat her and come to power, what those forces are about, how undemocratic and unsecular and deeply problematic those forces are for the minorities in Bangladesh, also for the idea of democracy. I think it's astounding. So there is a inherent hypocrisy in the West's argument.
So you had mentioned that probably situation is a little better in the cities like Dhaka, but in the villages or in the hinterland, it's far more challenging for the Hindu community. If you can elaborate a bit on that.
Actually, it's not quite that simple. Even in the deepest corners of Bangladesh, I have seen examples of syncretism. Like Durga Puja is a thing in Bangladesh. I mean, I have traveled across Bangladesh. I keep going there, as you know. But during Durga Puja, last Durga Puja, October, I have been to a place called Magura, where I have seen villagers, Hindus and Muslims both, kind of shared the festivity around Durga Puja, if not the religiosity. The festivity is shared in certain villages by the Muslims as well. Now, every time I say this, there is a counter argument, but what about the pandals that are attacked? So that's also a parallel reality. So yes, there are spaces within Bangladesh where, and quite a few spaces where you will see examples of syncretism, but you'd also see, if you look hard enough and long enough, that there are temples that are being attacked. There are stealthily, people would come in the middle of the night and break idols, throw them on the street. And there is a sense of there is this constant sense of othering that you cannot really avoid. So it's a society which is very layered, like most societies in South Asia are. It's a society that's deeply layered, and there is no easy answer to the question whether it is better now than it was before. Yes, of course it's better now. If you look at the number of incidents of crime against Hindus in Bangladesh, but is there a constant threat that the Hindus in Bangladesh live under? The answer would be yes. And if you look at hard data, the declining population of Hindus in Bangladesh tell you a very scary story. So there's been a sharp decline from 1947 to 1971, from 1971 to 2024. There's been a very sharp decline. So if you do a simple, data chart of the declining population, it will tell you where did these Hindus vanish. And so that we have to constantly keep looking at the forces within Bangladesh's civil society and see what's happening. Syncretism, yes, and I keep talking about syncretism because I see it existing in my visits, and I see great examples of syncretism, but that does not that cannot take our eyes off the threat that remains within Bangladeshi society. I told you about Jamaat Islami. I mean, it's a very popular front. Now, who are its members? It's Bangladeshis themselves. So there's a huge chunk of Bangladeshis who actually subscribe to the idea of Jamaat Islami Bangladesh. So they don't come from inside.
Do you see a future of Hindu community in Bangladesh? What do you project? This is just I mean, you're free to answer it um, in your way in the next 1 or 2 decades. Would you see that the migration would continue as it has been over the last 30, 40 years?
Uh, my job has been, in terms of answering this question, has been made easy by a Muslim professor who, a couple of years ago, put out a research paper where he says that if the situation does not improve in 30 years' time, there will be no Hindus left in Bangladesh. Professor Barkat. Now, since the book came out, this line has been quoted in one or two places, and some people have mistakenly thought that I am saying it. I am not saying it. It's a Dhaka University professor who wrote a paper, and that paper's headline the findings of the paper was also covered by Bangladeshi press. So no Hindus in Bangladesh in 30 years. If you just Google it, the reference to that link and to that paper will come. But having said that, that paper was written when the Sheikh Hasina government was not in power. It was during a different political dispensation that was in power. But it's somebody from within Bangladesh who has made this very problematic, very disturbing projection for the future of Hindus in Bangladesh. Do I think there will be no Hindus in Bangladesh? I don't know. I don't want to think that, but I would, having said that, I'll also say that there is a sense of within this. I mean, the Hindu community, at least large sections of the community, do feel that they are under siege. Sometimes there are pejorative terms for Hindus in Bangladesh, both in Dhaka city and outside. And one of the things that are said of them is that they're Indians. They're Indians, they're raw agents. These are things that are casually, sometimes in casual banter, said. So which many of them find deeply problematic. So I was seeing a video. This is Ramzan time, and I saw a video of a female passenger in a bus, traveling, and her head was not covered. I think she was a Muslim lady, but her head was not covered, and the bus conductor asked her to get down from the bus because during Ramzan she cannot. The conductor said she cannot come out in the open with her head uncovered. A friend of mine who's a Muslim journalist in Bangladesh has said that if this current idea of Bangladesh, idea that the idea that at least Army League speaks about, the idea of a secular, more democratic Bangladesh that Sheikh Mujibur Rahman spoke about. If this idea is lost, it's not just the Hindus in Bangladesh who will have to leave the country, it's also Muslims like them who do not subscribe to that hard idea of Islam who will have no place to go. So to answer you, I think I think it's a situation that can be dire if such forces that are inimical to the idea of Bangladesh are not checked.
Interestingly, the West has normalized both persecution of Hindus in Pakistan and Bangladesh, and
Yes.
they keep focusing on India for obviously, on many of the occasions they actually extrapolate data which suits them. They
Yeah.
recently came out with an index trying to project as if Palestine and Ukraine are more happier than us.
Yeah.
And I mean so that shows the West. Let me, my concern is at a time when the even Middle East is trying to come out of the shackles of conservatism in certain way and trying to embrace a
Yes.
syncretic culture or revive it. Do you think that it is South Asia which is far more getting trying to be a little more conservative? Countries like Bangladesh and Pakistan, which had a history of a syncretic culture, but today, to the extent that even probably they are looking, they look at probably the inauguration of a temple in UAE with lot of shock and disdain. So, do you think that the Middle East is trying to come out of something which maybe some of the South Asian countries are trying to embrace too hard? Um,
It's a very interesting question. In fact, it's jokingly said that, and no, and it's though it's jokingly said, I think there's a grain of truth in it that Muslims from the Arab countries will kind of look down on Muslims from South Asia, and and tell them that you are not Muslim enough, you are converts. We are the original Muslims, and you are converts from other faiths. But while the Middle East is on a very different trajectory, I think in South Asia, the hardliners are gaining traction. It's a very ironical situation. I was speaking about this a while back to a friend that there was this small protest within Bangladesh by women against the Sheikh Hasina administration, saying that they should be allowed to travel to go to airports in covered fully from head to toe, in burqas, and only there's a slit where the eyes are, where they can look out, but the face is covered, the hands are covered in black gloves, and from head to toe they're covered in burqa. Now that's, you can't pass through security like that. You have to at least remove your veil so that your identity can be checked. And their entire position was, you cannot ask us to do that, because that goes against our religion, that goes against our freedom to practice our religion the way we want to do it. And who were they protesting to? Who were they protesting against? Sheikh Hasina, who happens to be a Muslim prime minister. So imagine that's the condition, that it's not a large it's not a large group, I would like to believe, but still there were people, women, who wanted to somehow convince Sheikh Hasina and the administration to allow them to to move around airports without having to show their face. So I think yeah, there is a conservatism which is deeply problematic, which is against the what's happening in the Middle East. It's very difficult to understand that when the Middle East is walking a different path, why does South Asia continue to drag itself down?
Interestingly, there are fault lines, perhaps, as you mentioned, within the Bangladeshi Muslim community as well. One side which believes in the syncretic culture, and we have seen many of the atheists had to lose their lives
Yeah.
for that. Does it still exist to that extent? And my last question connected to this: did you face resistance as a researcher in Bangladesh, or did you have any example or experience like that where things were not very welcoming of you?
I did not. No, I was lucky. I think till now that I did not really find find a kind of resistance. But I can sense, and that's the fear that you all have stereotype. We like to stereotype, right? You'd like to believe that people who believe in a different way of life, in a different political ideology, would be people who are who dress a certain way, who perhaps have long beard, no mustache, and pajamas which are little short. But I have found that even within very recognized spaces, there are people who are who are um, who are deeply socially and religiously conservative. But they are very English educated. They have clipped English and very urbane. So I think that's a fear that radicalization does not go away with somebody's social upward mobility. I think that's something that look at very, very carefully, because you tend to think that for outside cities or outside this English spaces are only prone to hardline philosophies. It's not quite.
Right. So thank you, Deepda, for this wonderful conversation. When we look forward to have many more such conversations with you in future, it is always a delight to talk to you and the kind of depth and the kind of perspectives you bring in. Thank you so much on behalf of Dr. Shyam Prasad Mukherjee Research Foundation. Thank you.
Thank you.